Sarah Mitchell had seen a lot in her 20 years as a social worker, but nothing could have prepared her for that cold November night. She was leaving the downtown mission after a long day of helping families find temporary shelter when she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it over the wind. A whimper, soft and scared like a wounded animal trying to stay hidden. She stopped walking and listened. There it was again. Sarah's heart began to race as she followed the sound to the alley beside the mission. The streetlight barely reached back there, and the shadows made everything look distorted and strange. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping it across the wet pavement and overflowing dumpsters. That's when she saw her. A little girl no more than 4 years old curled up behind a dumpster with her knees pulled to her chest. She was wearing a thin summer dress completely wrong for the freezing weather, and her bare feet were dirty and covered in small cuts. In her arms, she clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, its fur matted and one ear hanging by a thread. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She'd worked with neglected children before, but seeing this tiny girl alone in the cold hit her differently. Maybe it was because she looked so small, so utterly vulnerable, or maybe it was the way the child's eyes met hers, wide and terrified, but also somehow hopeful, as if she'd been waiting for someone to find her. "Hey, sweetheart," Sarah said softly, crouching down several feet away. She knew better than to rush forward. Frightened children needed space. "My name is Sarah. I'm not going to hurt you. Are you okay?" The girl didn't answer. She just stared at Sarah with those huge eyes and held her rabbit tighter. Sarah noticed something striking about her face. One eye was bright blue and the other was green. She'd never seen that before, not in person anyway. It made the child look almost otherworldly in the dim light. Sarah called 911, keeping her voice calm and gentle, so she wouldn't scare the girl more than she already was. While they waited for the ambulance, Sarah took off her own coat and slowly approached the child. "You must be so cold," she said.
"Can I give you my coat?"
"Just until help gets here?" The girl watched her every movement but didn't pull away when Sarah carefully draped the coat over her tiny shoulders. Up close, Sarah could see that the child was severely malnourished. Her cheeks were hollow, her arms looked like twigs, and her dress hung off her frame like it belonged to someone much larger. "Do you have a name?" Sarah asked gently. "Can you tell me your name?" "Nothing." The girl's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Sarah's heart ached. This wasn't just fear or shyness. This child had been through something terrible, something that had stolen her voice. The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and concerned paramedics who moved with practiced efficiency. The girl began to panic, pressing herself harder against the wall and making small, frightened sounds. Sarah instinctively reached out and took her hand. "It's okay," she whispered. "They're here to help. I'll come with you. I promise I won't leave you." Something in Sarah's voice must have gotten through because the girl's grip tightened around her fingers, and she allowed herself to be lifted onto a stretcher. Sarah climbed into the ambulance with her, still holding her hand, and didn't let go the entire ride to the hospital. At the emergency room, doctors examined the girl while Sarah stayed nearby, answering questions from police officers who'd arrived to investigate. No, she didn't know who the child was. No, there was no one else in the alley. No, the girl hadn't spoken a single word. The police promised to check missing person reports and review security cameras in the area, but Sarah could tell from their expressions that they weren't optimistic. Portland was a big city, and children slipped through the cracks more often than anyone wanted to admit. The medical examination revealed what Sarah had suspected. The girl was severely underweight, dehydrated, and showed signs of long-term neglect. But there were no recent injuries, no signs of physical abuse. It was as if someone had simply stopped caring for her, and she'd been left to fend for herself. The thought made Sarah's stomach turn. 3 days passed and the police came up empty. No missing person reports, no parents frantically searching for their daughter, no relatives coming forward. It was as if the girl had appeared out of thin air, with no past and no identity. The hospital staff started calling her Jane Doe, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to use that name. It felt too cold, too impersonal for this little soul who'd already been through so much. During those 3 days, Sarah visited every chance she got. She'd take breaks from her regular casework to sit beside the hospital bed, reading stories and talking softly even though the girl never responded. The child would watch her with those mismatched eyes, sometimes touching Sarah's hand or playing with her hair, but never making a sound. On the fourth day, a social worker from Child Protective Services arrived to discuss placement options. The girl would need to go into the foster system, they explained. They'd find a suitable home, though it might take a few days given her special needs and the lack of information about her background. Sarah surprised herself with what she said next. "I'll take her." The social worker looked up from her paperwork, eyebrows raised. "You want to be her emergency foster parent?" "Yes." Sarah hadn't planned to say it. The words just came out, but the moment they did, she knew they were right. "I'm already certified. I have the space, and she knows me. She trusts me." It was true. Over the past few days, the girl had formed an attachment to Sarah that hospital staff had noticed. She'd get agitated when Sarah left and would only calm down when she returned. For a child who couldn't or wouldn't speak, her feelings were remarkably clear. The approval process moved quickly, and within a week, Sarah was bringing the girl home to her small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. She'd set up the spare room with a bed, colorful curtains, and a few toys she'd picked up at a local store. It wasn't much, but it was warm and safe, and right now that's what mattered most. "I've been thinking about what to call you," Sarah said as she showed the girl around the house. "Would it be okay if I called you Emma? Just temporarily until we figure out your real name?" The girl, Emma, looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. It was the first real response she'd given to any question, and Sarah felt a surge of hope. Maybe with time and patience they'd get through this together. That first night was hard. Emma woke up screaming from nightmares 3 times, and each time, Sarah rushed in to comfort her. She'd hold the trembling child, humming softly and stroking her hair until the terror subsided. By the 3rd time, Emma didn't want Sarah to leave. So Sarah ended up sleeping on the floor beside Emma's bed, one hand reaching up to hold her small fingers. The days turned into weeks, and slowly a routine developed. Sarah would wake Emma gently in the mornings, help her get dressed, and make breakfast. Simple things like toast with jam or scrambled eggs. Emma ate like she was afraid the food would disappear, stuffing it in her mouth so fast that Sarah had to teach her to slow down. It broke Sarah's heart every time. During the day, while Sarah worked from home when possible or arranged for a trusted sitter, Emma would play quietly with her stuffed rabbit or watch through the window at the neighborhood children playing outside. She never asked to join them, never showed any interest in going outside at all. It was as if her world had shrunk to the size of Sarah's house, and anything beyond that was too frightening to consider. Sarah took Emma to appointments with child psychologists who specialized in trauma. They explained that selective mutism in children who'd experienced severe stress or trauma wasn't uncommon. The girl might start speaking again when she felt safe enough, or she might not. They recommended play therapy, art therapy, and most importantly, patience and consistency. So Sarah was patient. She talked to Emma constantly, narrating her day, asking gentle questions that didn't require answers, creating a constant stream of warm, safe words. She bought coloring books and crayons and watched as Emma began to express herself through pictures. At first, the drawings were all dark, heavy black scribbles that covered entire pages, but gradually colors started appearing: a yellow sun, a green tree, a blue house. One evening, about 6 months after Sarah had found her, Emma drew something different. Sarah was making dinner when Emma tugged on her sleeve and held up her picture. It showed a woman with long dark hair and tears on her face. Behind her was a big house with many windows. Emma pointed at the woman and then at herself, making connections Sarah didn't fully understand yet. "Is this someone you knew?" Sarah asked softly. "Someone who was sad?" Emma nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Then she did something that shocked Sarah completely. She opened her mouth and spoke 2 words, barely a whisper but clear enough to hear. "Mama sad." Sarah's hand started shaking. She set down the spoon she'd been holding and knelt beside Emma, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me with that." It wasn't much, just 2 words, but it was everything. It was a beginning, a tiny crack in the wall Emma had built around herself. And Sarah knew in that moment that she couldn't imagine her life without this brave little girl anymore. Whatever happened next, whatever they discovered about Emma's past, they would face it together. Those 2 words, Mama said, changed everything. After 6 months of silence, Emma had finally spoken, and Sarah felt like they'd crossed an invisible bridge together. But the words also raised more questions than they answered. Who was this sad mama? Where was she now? And what had happened to make a little girl so traumatized that she couldn't speak? Sarah shared Emma's breakthrough with the police detective assigned to the case, a kind woman named Detective Martinez who'd been checking in regularly. Martinez looked at Emma's drawing of the crying woman in the big house, making notes and promising to look into it. But Sarah could see the doubt in her eyes. After all this time with no leads, a child's drawing wasn't much to go on. The psychologist, Dr. Helen Foster, was more encouraging. "This is significant progress," she told Sarah during their next session. "Emma is starting to process her trauma. The fact that she spoke at all means she's beginning to feel safe. We need to be patient and let her open up at her own pace." Patient. That word again. Sarah was trying, but sometimes it was hard. She'd lie awake at night wondering about Emma's past, about the people who'd let this happen to a child. But then she'd remember Emma's small hand in hers, the way the girl would smile now when Sarah made silly faces, and she'd remind herself that the present mattered more than the past. As spring arrived, Emma began speaking more frequently, though always in short, simple sentences. "I'm hungry. Can we read? The bunny needs fixing." Each new phrase felt like a victory, something to celebrate. Sarah bought a sewing kit, and together they repaired Emma's beloved stuffed rabbit, giving it a new ear and cleaning its matted fur. Emma held it close afterward, something like peace settling over her face. Sarah started taking Emma to a small preschool 3 mornings a week. She'd been nervous about it. Would Emma retreat back into silence around other children? Would the noise and chaos be too much? But Dr. Foster had encouraged it, saying socialization was important for Emma's development. The first day was rough. Emma clung to Sarah's legs, her breathing fast and shallow. But the teacher, Mrs. Chen, was wonderful. She had a gentle way about her that reminded Sarah why she'd chosen this particular school. Mrs. Chen didn't force Emma to join the other children. Instead, she set up a quiet corner with books and puzzles where Emma could observe from a distance. Gradually, over weeks, Emma warmed up. She started playing alongside other children, then with them. Sarah would arrive for pickup and find Emma building blocks with a little boy named Marcus, or listening to a girl named Lily read a picture book. Each small interaction felt miraculous. It was during one of these pickups that Mrs. Chen pulled Sarah aside. "I noticed something about Emma," she said carefully. Her eyes, one blue, one green. "It's called heterochromia. It's quite rare. I only mention it because my sister has it too. And she had some genetic testing done as a child. Just routine stuff, but it might be worth checking with Emma's doctor." Sarah thanked her and filed the information away. At Emma's next pediatric appointment, she mentioned it to Dr. Patel, who examined Emma's eyes more closely. "Heterochromia can be harmless," he explained, "but sometimes it's associated with certain genetic conditions. Given that we don't know Emma's medical history, it might be wise to do some basic testing, just to be thorough." Sarah agreed, and they scheduled the tests. She didn't think much of it at the time. It seemed like a precaution more than anything else. She was more focused on the fact that Emma had started calling her Miss Sarah and had begun asking questions about the world around her. "Why is the sky blue? Where do birds sleep? Can we plant flowers?" They planted a small garden together in the backyard. Tomatoes, sunflowers, and marigolds. Emma loved checking on them every morning, watering them carefully with her small watering can. Sarah took photos of Emma smiling in the garden, her mismatched eyes bright with joy, and realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd been this happy herself. She'd been single for years, having devoted most of her adult life to her work. Her friends had mostly drifted away or settled into their own family routines. But now with Emma, she felt like she'd found her purpose. This wasn't just fostering anymore. This was becoming a family. That's when Sarah made the decision. She contacted her lawyer and started the process of formal adoption. The paperwork was extensive, the home visits thorough, but Sarah didn't mind. She answered every question honestly, opened her life for inspection, and made her intentions clear. She wanted to adopt Emma. She wanted to give this child a permanent home, a real chance at a normal life. Emma seemed to sense what was happening, even before Sarah explained it. "Am I staying?" she asked one evening during their bedtime routine. Sarah sat down on the edge of the bed and took Emma's hands in hers. "If you want to stay, if you'd like me to be your forever mama, then yes. I'm working on making that happen. Would you like that?" Emma nodded so hard her whole body moved with it. "I want to stay. I want you to be my mama. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Then that's what we'll do. I promise. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The adoption proceedings were moving forward. Emma was thriving in preschool. She was speaking more each day, though she still had nightmares sometimes and still refused to talk about most of her past. Dr. Foster assured Sarah this was normal. Some memories were too painful to revisit, and Emma might never remember or be ready to share everything that had happened to her. Then came the dental appointment. It was supposed to be routine, Emma's first visit to the dentist since Sarah had taken her in. Dr. Reynolds was patient and kind, showing Emma all the tools and explaining everything before he started. Emma sat bravely in the chair, gripping her stuffed rabbit while Dr. Reynolds examined her teeth. Halfway through the exam, Dr. Reynolds paused. He looked at something more closely, made a few notes, and took several x-rays. When he finished, he asked Sarah to step into his office while his assistant gave Emma a prize from the treasure chest. I noticed something unusual, Dr. Reynolds said, pulling up Emma's x-rays on his computer screen. See these patterns here? This particular dental structure, the way her teeth are developing, the shape of her jaw, it's consistent with a rare genetic condition called bilateral coronal synostosis. It's not harmful in most cases, but it's quite distinctive. It only occurs in about 1 in 50,000 people. Sarah stared at the screen, not understanding why this mattered. Is she okay? Does she need treatment? Oh, she's fine, Dr. Reynolds assured her. But given that this is a genetic condition, and given that Emma's background is unknown, I think it's important information for her medical file. If you're going through with adoption, the court might want to do a DNA test to search for biological relatives anyway. This just adds another piece to the puzzle. Sarah felt a strange flutter in her stomach, something between anxiety and hope. A DNA test. She hadn't really thought about it, but Dr. Reynolds was right. The court would likely require it as part of the adoption process, to ensure no biological family could come forward later with claims. When she discussed it with her lawyer, he agreed. It's standard procedure in cases like this, he explained. We'll submit Emma's DNA to the databases that track missing persons and genetic relatives. If there's anyone out there looking for her, or anyone she's related to, we'll find them, and if not, it strengthens your adoption case. Sarah agreed, though something about it made her nervous. What if they found Emma's biological family? What if someone came forward to claim her? She pushed the thoughts away, reminding herself that no one had been looking for Emma all this time. No one had reported her missing. No one had cared enough to find her. She was Emma's real family now in every way that mattered. The DNA test was simple, just a cheek swab that took seconds. Emma didn't even fuss about it. The lab said results would take about 3 to 4 weeks. Sarah tried not to think about it, tried to focus on their daily routines and the happiness they'd built together. Emma started telling longer stories now. She'd talk about things she saw in picture books, create elaborate narratives for her toys. Sometimes she'd mention fragments of memories, a room with yellow wallpaper, a dog that barked a lot, someone who sang her lullabies. But when Sarah asked questions, Emma would go quiet, as if the memories were there but just out of reach, like trying to remember a dream after waking up. They celebrated Emma's 5th birthday, or what they'd decided would be her birthday since no one knew her real date of birth. Sarah threw a small party with a few children from preschool. Emma wore a purple dress Sarah had bought special for the occasion and blew out 5 candles on a chocolate cake. The pure joy on her face, the way she laughed with her friends, the pride in her eyes when she opened presents, it made Sarah's heart feel so full it might burst. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, the little girl wrapped her arms around Sarah's neck and whispered, "Best day ever, Mama. Mama, not Miss Sarah anymore, but Mama." Sarah held Emma close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, and whispered back, "Best day ever, sweetheart. I love you so much. Love you too, Mama." 3 days later, Sarah's phone rang. It was her lawyer, and his voice sounded strange, urgent and confused at the same time. "Sarah, we need to talk about the DNA results. Can you come to my office today? And please don't bring Emma." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What's wrong? Did they find her family?" "It's complicated," he said. "Very complicated. We need to discuss this in person, and we'll need to involve the authorities. Something's come up that none of us expected." Sarah felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Whatever this was, it was big, and somehow she knew that their peaceful life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. Sarah sat in her lawyer's office with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, trying to steady her breathing. Across from her sat David Chen, her lawyer, along with Detective Martinez and a woman she didn't recognize, a geneticist from the state lab, according to the introduction. "Thank you for coming so quickly," David began, his expression serious. "What we're about to tell you is unprecedented. In all my years practicing family law, I've never encountered anything like this." The geneticist, Dr. Patricia Summers, pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Ms. Mitchell, when we ran Emma's DNA through our databases, we got a match. A very strong match, 50% shared DNA, which indicates a parent-child relationship." Sarah's heart leaped. "So we found her mother? Or father?" Dr. Summers exchanged glances with the others. "That's where this becomes complicated. The match is to a woman named Victoria Hartwell. She's in our database because her father, Richard Hartwell, submitted his DNA years ago during a high-profile missing persons case he was funding. The system flagged Victoria as a match because of the family connection." "Okay," Sarah said slowly. "So Victoria is Emma's mother. Can we contact her?" Detective Martinez leaned forward, her face grave. "Victoria Hartwell died 7 years ago in a car accident. She was 38 years old. Single, no children listed on any records." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Emma is 4, maybe 5 years old. How could her mother have died 7 years ago?" "That's exactly what we need to figure out," Dr. Summers said. "I've run the tests 3 times. The DNA doesn't lie. Emma is biologically related to Victoria Hartwell as a daughter would be to her mother. But the timeline makes no sense." Sarah felt dizzy. Could there be a mistake? Could she be related to Victoria in a different way? "The genetic markers are clear," Dr. Summers explained. "Emma shares 50% of her DNA with Victoria. That only happens in parent-child relationships or between full siblings. Given the age difference, parent-child is the only possibility that makes sense. But how a woman who died 7 years ago could have a 5-year-old daughter?" She trailed off, shaking her head. Detective Martinez pulled out her tablet. "I've been looking into Victoria Hartwell's background. She came from one of Portland's wealthiest families. Her father, Richard Hartwell, owns Hartwell Properties, half the commercial real estate in this city. Victoria was his only child. She died in a single car accident on a rainy night. The investigation concluded it was an accident. She lost control on a sharp curve." "Was she pregnant when she died?" Sarah asked, grasping at the only explanation she could think of. "That's what we checked first," Martinez replied. "I pulled the medical examiner's report. There's no mention of pregnancy. The autopsy was thorough. If Victoria had been pregnant, especially far enough along to survive, they would have noted it." The room fell silent. Sarah tried to process what she was hearing, but it felt like trying to solve a puzzle with pieces from different boxes. Nothing fit together. David spoke up. "There's more, Sarah. The lab leaked this information somehow. The media got hold of it. It's already making headlines. Mystery child's impossible DNA and things like that. Richard Hartwell's office has been flooded with calls. He released a statement saying he's shocked and wants answers. His lawyers have already contacted me." Sarah's chest tightened. "What does he want?" "To meet Emma. To understand how this is possible and—" David hesitated. "To explore his legal rights if Emma is indeed his granddaughter." The word hit Sarah like a slap. Granddaughter. If Emma was Victoria's daughter, that made Richard Hartwell her grandfather. A wealthy, powerful man who'd just lost his daughter all over again in a way, discovering she'd left behind a child he never knew existed. "He can't take her," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Emma has been through too much. She's finally feeling safe, finally healing. I won't let anyone take her away." "No one's taking her anywhere right now," Martinez assured her. "But Sarah, you need to prepare yourself. If this man is Emma's biological grandfather, he'll have legal standing. And with his resources, he could fight for custody or at least visitation rights." Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Emma doesn't know him. She barely knew her own past until recently. This would terrify her. "Which is why we need to figure out what actually happened," Dr. Summers said. "I've been going through Victoria Hartwell's medical records, with proper warrants, of course. I found something interesting. About 8 years ago, Victoria underwent cancer treatment. She had early-stage ovarian cancer. The treatment was successful, but before she started chemotherapy, she froze several of her eggs at a fertility clinic. It's a common practice for young women facing treatment that might affect their fertility. Sarah's mind raced. So you think someone used those frozen eggs to create Emma? It's the only explanation that makes biological sense, Dr. Summers said. If Victoria's eggs were fertilized and implanted in a surrogate after her death, that would explain why Emma is genetically Victoria's daughter, but wasn't born until years after Victoria died. But who would do that? Sarah asked. And why? If Victoria was dead, who had the authority to use her eggs? Detective Martinez was already typing on her tablet. I'm going to need to investigate the fertility clinic. Find out what happened to Victoria's frozen eggs. This is starting to look less like a mystery and more like a crime. The meeting lasted another hour, but Sarah barely absorbed the rest of it. Her mind kept circling back to Emma, safe with Mrs. Chen, the trusted neighbor who was watching her for a few hours. Emma, who had no idea that her entire world was about to be turned upside down again. When Sarah finally got home, Emma ran to greet her at the door. Mama, I made a picture for you. It has flowers and a butterfly. Sarah scooped her up, holding her tight, breathing in her familiar scent. I can't wait to see it, sweetheart. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea she didn't drink, staring at her phone. The story was everywhere online. Deceased heiress's secret daughter. DNA miracle or scandal. Portland's most mysterious child. They'd kept Emma's name and photo private for now, but Sarah knew it was only a matter of time. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Mitchell. The voice was older, male, refined. This is Richard Hartwell. I apologize for calling so late, but I couldn't wait any longer. I need to talk to you about the child. About Emma. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Mr. Hartwell. Please, I know this is overwhelming for everyone. It's overwhelming for me, too. Victoria was my only child. Losing her nearly destroyed me. And now to learn that there might be a little girl out there who's part of her, who carries her DNA. His voice broke. I'm not trying to take her from you. I just need to understand. I need to know how this is possible. Despite herself, Sarah heard the genuine pain in his voice. This wasn't some calculating billionaire trying to claim property. This was a grieving father who'd just been given an impossible hope. I don't know how it's possible, Sarah admitted. But Emma is real, and she's been through terrible things. Whatever we discover, she has to come first. Her safety, her well-being, that's what matters most. I agree completely, Richard said, which is why I've hired the best private investigators in the country. If someone used my daughter's eggs without authorization, if someone created a child and then abandoned her, I want to know who and why. And I want them held accountable. Over the next few days, Sarah watched as the investigation exploded into something much larger than she'd imagined. Detective Martinez got a warrant for the fertility clinic's records. What they found shocked everyone. The clinic where Victoria had frozen her eggs had gone through a management change 6 years ago. The medical director at the time, a Dr. Marcus Chen, had been fired under mysterious circumstances. When investigators dug deeper, they found sealed complaints from other patients about missing biological materials. Dr. Chen had disappeared from Portland shortly after his firing, and the clinic had settled several lawsuits quietly, keeping the details confidential to protect patient privacy. Now, with a child's welfare at stake, those sealed records were being opened. Richard Hartwell held a press conference. Sarah watched it on TV, Emma playing quietly nearby with her toys, unaware that the distinguished older man on the screen might be her grandfather. I lost my daughter 7 years ago, Richard said, his voice steady but emotional. It was the darkest day of my life. But if there's even a chance that she left behind a child, a part of herself that survived, then I will stop at nothing to find out the truth. I'm offering a $1 million reward for information leading to the person or persons responsible for what happened to this little girl. The reward made headlines everywhere. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, TV producers, even people claiming to have information. She stopped answering calls from numbers she didn't recognize and kept Emma close, barely letting her out of her sight. Mrs. Chen from the preschool called with concern. There are reporters outside the school, she said gently. I think maybe Emma should stay home for a while until this settles down. Sarah agreed, though her heart broke at the thought of disrupting Emma's routine again. But when she explained to Emma that they'd have a few days at home together, Emma seemed relieved rather than disappointed. Too many people asking questions, she said quietly. It's loud. That's when Sarah realized Emma had picked up on the tension, on the change in their lives even though Sarah had tried to shield her from it. Children were perceptive that way. Emma, Sarah said carefully, do you remember anything about before I found you? About where you came from or who took care of you? Emma's face clouded over. She picked up her stuffed rabbit and held it close. Don't remember much. Just the sad mama in the picture and… She stopped, struggling with something. It's okay, sweetheart. You can tell me anything. There was a doctor, Emma whispered. He was mean. He said I cost too much money. He said nobody wanted me. Sarah's heart shattered into pieces. She pulled Emma into her arms, holding her while she cried, both of them crying together. That's not true, Sarah said fiercely. I want you. I will always want you. You are wanted and loved and precious. Emma's words confirmed what Sarah had suspected. Someone had deliberately created this child and then discarded her when she became inconvenient. The thought made Sarah's blood boil. Detective Martinez called that evening with news. We found him, Dr. Marcus Chen. He's been living in Idaho under a different name, running an unlicensed medical practice. We're bringing him in now. Sarah felt a rush of emotions, relief, anger, fear about what they might discover. What happens now? Now we get answers, Martinez said grimly. And we make sure whoever did this pays for what they did to Emma. The arrest of Dr. Marcus Chen made national news. Sarah watched the coverage with a mix of satisfaction and dread as the disgraced fertility specialist was led away in handcuffs, his face hidden behind his jacket. This was the man who'd played with people's lives, who'd created children like they were commodities. This was the man who'd somehow brought Emma into existence and then abandoned her to die behind a dumpster. Detective Martinez called Sarah before heading into the interrogation. I wanted you to know, we're recording everything. You'll get a full transcript. I promise we'll get to the bottom of this. Sarah waited, every minute feeling like an hour. Emma sensed her tension and stayed close, pressing her small body against Sarah's side while they watched a movie neither of them were really paying attention to. Sarah stroked Emma's hair absently, thinking about the nightmare that was finally coming to light. When Martinez called back that evening, her voice was heavy with exhaustion and disgust. He confessed all of it. Sarah, this is so much worse than we thought. Sarah sent Emma to play in her room and closed the kitchen door. Tell me. Dr. Chen was stealing genetic material from his patients for years. Eggs, sperm, embryos. He was fertilizing eggs and selling embryos on the black market to people who couldn't adopt through legal channels or who wanted to bypass the system for other reasons. He didn't care who they were or what they wanted children for. He just cared about the money. Sarah felt sick. And Victoria's eggs? He took them after her death. The clinic had protocols, legal requirements for what to do with frozen eggs when a patient died. But Chen saw an opportunity. Victoria came from money. Her DNA, her genetics. He thought someone would pay premium prices for a child with that pedigree. He fertilized 3 of her eggs with donor sperm, he won't say whose, and created 3 embryos. 3? Sarah's voice came out strangled. There are 2 more children out there? No, Martinez said quietly. Emma's the only one who survived. The other 2 embryos were implanted but didn't result in viable pregnancies. Emma was implanted in a surrogate, a woman named Jessica Torres who thought she was helping a wealthy couple who couldn't have children.
Chen paid her $30,000 and told her the baby would go to a loving home. But that's not what happened. No. When Emma was born,
the people who'd paid for her took one look at her eyes, the heterochromia, and decided she wasn't perfect enough. They'd paid for a designer baby and they thought the mismatched eyes were a defect. They refused to take her, just walked away from a newborn like she was a returned purchase. Sarah felt rage rising in her chest like fire. What about Jessica? The surrogate? Chen panicked when his clients rejected Emma. He couldn't put her up for adoption through proper channels because the whole arrangement was illegal. He told Jessica the adoptive parents changed their minds and that he'd find another family. He gave her an extra $5,000 to keep Emma for a few months while he looked for another buyer. A buyer, Sarah repeated, the word tasting like poison. He was trying to sell Emma. Jessica kept Emma for about a year, but she was struggling financially, and Chen wasn't paying her enough to support a child. According to Chen, she contacted him several times asking for more money or asking him to take Emma back. He kept putting her off. Eventually, Jessica just disappeared, left Emma behind and vanished. We're trying to track her down now. So Emma was abandoned twice, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. First by the people who ordered her creation, then by the woman who was paid to carry her. Chen says he didn't know Jessica had abandoned Emma. He claims he lost track of them both. But Sarah, we're finding evidence that he did this to multiple families. There are dozens of victims, people whose genetic material was stolen, women who were tricked into surrogacy arrangements they didn't fully understand, children who were created and sold like property. Emma's case is just the tip of the iceberg. Sarah wiped her eyes. What happens now? Chen is facing federal charges, wire fraud, theft, practicing medicine without proper licenses, violating reproductive health laws. He's looking at decades in prison, and every family affected is being notified. Some of these people didn't even know their eggs or sperm were missing. Others thought their materials were destroyed years ago. This is going to shake a lot of lives. After Martinez hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet kitchen for a long time. She thought about the chain of cruelty that had brought Emma into her life. The doctor who'd stolen Victoria's eggs. The couple who'd rejected a baby for having unique eyes. The surrogate who'd abandoned her. The years of neglect that had led to that cold November night. But she also thought about the resilience it had taken for Emma to survive all that. The strength in this little girl who'd been unwanted by everyone except Sarah. The miracle of the love they'd built together from such brokenness. A knock on the door startled her from her thoughts. Through the window, she saw Richard Hartwell standing on her porch, looking older and more worn than he had in his press conferences. He was alone, no lawyers or security guards, just an old man holding a manila envelope. Sarah hesitated, then opened the door. "I'm sorry for coming unannounced," Richard said, "but I couldn't wait any longer. The police briefed me on what they learned from Chen, about Victoria's eggs, about how Emma came to be. And I needed to see you, to talk to you." Sarah stepped aside to let him in. They sat in the living room, and Sarah could see Richard's eyes constantly darting toward the hallway where Emma's room was, as if he could sense his granddaughter's presence nearby. "I've been thinking about this nonstop," Richard began, his voice rough with emotion. "About what Victoria would want, about what's best for that little girl. I'm 72 years old, Ms. Mitchell. I've spent the last 7 years living half a life, going through the motions of business and society while feeling dead inside. Victoria was everything to me. Losing her..." He stopped, composing himself. Sarah waited, her heart pounding. "When I found out about Emma, my first instinct was to claim her, to hold on to this piece of Victoria that survived. But then I thought about what that would mean. Taking a traumatized child from the only stability she's known, from the only person who's shown her real love, disrupting her life to satisfy an old man's grief." He opened the manila envelope and pulled out papers. "These are my parental rights. I'm signing them away." Sarah stared at him, not understanding. "What?" "I'm not going to fight you for custody," Richard said firmly. "You found her. You saved her. You've loved her when everyone else failed her. You're her mother in every way that matters. I can see that without even meeting her. Then why are you here?" Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm hoping you'll let me be part of her life anyway. Not as someone trying to take her from you, but as family, as her grandfather, if you'll allow it." Sarah felt her own tears starting again. She thought about Emma, about how this man's daughter's DNA ran through her veins, about how Emma deserved to know where she came from, to have connections to the mother she'd never met. "She has nightmares," Sarah said quietly. "She still struggles sometimes. She's just starting to feel safe." "I know, and I won't push. I won't overwhelm her. I want to know her, to be there for her, to give her everything that Victoria would have given her if she'd lived." He looked at Sarah with desperate hope. "Please, let me be her grandfather. Not through the courts, not through lawyers. Just through love." Sarah studied his face, the grief etched into every line, the genuine longing in his eyes. She thought about Emma's drawings, about the sad mama she'd never known, about how much richer Emma's life could be with this connection to her biological heritage. "I need to talk to Emma first," Sarah said finally. "I need to prepare her. This has to go at her pace." Relief flooded Richard's face. "Of course. Whatever she needs. I'll wait as long as it takes." They talked for another hour, making plans, setting boundaries, discussing how to introduce the idea to Emma gradually. Richard shared stories about Victoria, how she'd loved painting, how she'd volunteered at children's hospitals, how she'd always wanted to be a mother but had been focused on beating cancer first. Sarah listened, gathering pieces of Emma's heritage to share with her someday. After Richard left, Sarah went to Emma's room. The little girl was lying on her bed, looking at one of her picture books. She looked up when Sarah entered, and her face broke into a smile. "Mama, look. This bunny has different colored eyes like me." Sarah sat down beside her, pulling Emma into her lap. "That's pretty special, isn't it? Having eyes that are different colors?" "Mrs. Chen says it makes me unique," Emma said proudly. "She says unique means special and wonderful. It does. And you are both of those things." Sarah took a deep breath. "Emma, I need to talk to you about something important. Something about where you came from." Emma tensed slightly, but she didn't pull away. "Okay. You know how we've been trying to find out about your family? The sad mama from your drawing?" Sarah spoke slowly, carefully. "We found out some things. Your mama's name was Victoria. She wasn't able to take care of you because she got sick and went to heaven before you were born." Emma processed this silently. "So she didn't leave me because she didn't want me?" Sarah's heart broke at the question. "No, sweetheart. She didn't even know you existed, but if she had known, she would have loved you so much. Everyone who knew her says she would have been an amazing mother." "What else did you find out?" "Victoria had a daddy who loved her very much. His name is Richard, and he's very old now, like a grandpa. And since Victoria was your mama, that makes Richard your grandpa." Sarah watched Emma's face carefully. "He'd really like to meet you someday, if that's okay with you. But only when you're ready. Only if you want to." Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Would I have to go live with him?" "No," Sarah said firmly. "Never. You're staying right here with me. We're a family, you and me. Nothing changes that. Richard just wants to visit sometimes, to get to know you, to be part of your life in a grandpa way. Like how Marcus has a grandma who brings cookies?" Sarah smiled through her tears. "Yes, exactly like that." Emma thought about it, then nodded slowly. "Okay, maybe I could meet him. But not today. Today I just want to be with you." "That's perfect," Sarah whispered, holding her close. "We have all the time in the world." 3 weeks passed before Emma felt ready to meet Richard. Sarah didn't push, letting Emma process everything at her own pace. They spent those weeks talking about Victoria, looking at photos Richard had sent, hearing stories about the woman who'd been Emma's biological mother. Emma seemed fascinated by the idea of Victoria, this person who looked a little bit like her, who had had the same unusual eyes. "She painted pictures?" Emma asked one evening, studying a photo of Victoria at an art show. "She did. She was really talented. Richard said she loved painting flowers and landscapes." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, "I want to paint like her. Can we get paints?" The next day, Sarah bought watercolors and paper, and Emma spent hours creating colorful pictures that they hung all over the house. It was her way of connecting with the mother she'd never meet, and Sarah's heart swelled watching her embrace that part of her identity. When Emma finally said she was ready to meet Richard, Sarah arranged for him to come to the house on a Saturday morning. Emma insisted on wearing her favorite purple dress and making cookies beforehand. "Grandpas like cookies," she explained with the certainty only a 5-year-old could have. Richard arrived exactly on time, carrying a carefully wrapped present. Sarah answered the door to find him looking nervous. This powerful businessman who commanded boardrooms and built empires was visibly trembling at the prospect of meeting his granddaughter. "She's in the kitchen," Sarah said gently. "Just remember, go slow. Let her come to you." Richard nodded, following Sarah through the house. Emma stood by the kitchen counter, partially hidden behind Sarah's legs, peeking out at this stranger who was somehow family. "Hello, Emma," Richard said softly, kneeling down despite his age so he'd be at her level. "I'm Richard. I'm very happy to meet you." Emma studied him with those mismatched eyes, so much like Victoria's. Sarah could see Richard's breath catch when he fully saw them for the first time. "You're my Mama Victoria's daddy," Emma stated. "I am. And that makes you my granddaughter. A granddaughter I didn't know I had, and finding you has been the most wonderful surprise of my life." Emma seemed to consider this. Then she held up the plate of slightly lopsided cookies she'd made. "I made these." Mama helped, but I did the mixing. Richard accepted a cookie like it was made of gold. "This is the best cookie I've ever seen." Did you know your Mama Victoria loved to bake too? Emma's eyes widened. She did? Oh, yes. When she was about your age, she used to help my wife, your Grandma Eleanor, make cookies every Sunday. Chocolate chip were her favorite. Those are my favorite too, Emma said, a smile breaking through her nervousness. Sarah watched them carefully, ready to intervene if Emma showed any signs of distress. But instead, she saw Emma slowly warming up, asking questions about Victoria, showing Richard her paintings. Richard handled it perfectly, never pushing, never overwhelming, just being present and gentle and genuine in his interest in everything Emma showed him. After an hour, Emma climbed onto the couch next to Richard and opened the present he'd brought. Inside was a photo album filled with pictures of Victoria at Emma's age. Victoria on a swing, Victoria blowing out birthday candles, Victoria holding a puppy. Emma traced the pictures with her finger, seeing herself in this woman she'd never known. You have her smile, Richard said quietly, and her eyes, of course, but also her spirit. Victoria was brave and strong just like you. Emma looked up at him. Was she nice? The nicest person I ever knew. She would have loved you so much, Emma. I wish more than anything that she could have been here to raise you herself, but I think she'd be really happy knowing that Sarah found you and loves you. Emma glanced at Sarah, then back at Richard. Can you come back again? I want to hear more stories about Mama Victoria. Richard's eyes filled with tears, but he smiled. I would love that. Anytime you want. I have hundreds of stories to tell you. As the weeks turned into months, Richard became a regular presence in their lives. He'd come for dinner every Tuesday, always bringing small gifts, art supplies, books about painting, a locket with Victoria's picture inside that Emma wore everywhere. He set up a college fund for Emma that would ensure she'd never have to worry about her education. But more than the money, he gave Emma something invaluable, a connection to her past, to the woman who'd given her life even if she'd never had the chance to raise her. The legal situation with Dr. Chen moved forward steadily. His trial became one of the biggest medical ethics cases in years. 23 families came forward with evidence that their genetic materials had been stolen or misused. 7 children were confirmed to have been born through Chen's illegal operation. Sarah attended some of the hearings, bearing witness to what had happened to Emma and the others. Chen showed no remorse during the trial. He claimed he'd been helping people, giving them children they wanted. The judge didn't buy it. In his sentencing, he called Chen's actions one of the most egregious violations of medical ethics and human dignity this court has ever seen. Chen received 45 years in federal prison. The verdict made headlines. But for Sarah and Emma, it was just a footnote to their real story, the family they were building together. The adoption finalized that same month. Sarah had worried about how Emma would feel about officially becoming her daughter, given everything they'd learned about Victoria. But Emma had no doubts. You're my real mama, Emma told the judge during the final hearing. You're the one who found me and kept me safe and taught me I was worth loving. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Richard threw a celebration party at his estate, inviting everyone who'd been part of Emma's journey. Dr. Foster, Mrs. Chen from the preschool, Detective Martinez, even Dr. Reynolds, the dentist whose observation had started the whole investigation. Emma wore a white dress and a flower crown, and Sarah wore her best suit, and they stood together while Richard toasted to the 2 bravest women I know. Later, as Emma played in Richard's garden with children from her preschool, Richard pulled Sarah aside. I have something for you, he said, handing her an envelope. Inside were legal documents. Sarah scanned them, confused. What is this?